Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive, and welcome to Inside Texas Football, powered by InsideTexas.com. Right now, we are running a promo, but before you take advantage of that amazing promo at Inside Texas, we want you to like our video, subscribe to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel, and then, of course, go join InsideTexas.com. 2 months gets you $1, Ian. Look how excited Ian is at that information. He blinked twice and he's barely smiling. That's he's fired up. He's about to run through a wall. I did some calculations, Ian. That is 12 and a half cents a week. Do you think our fine YouTube viewers and our podcast listeners can afford a little over 12 cents a week to get the best information possible about Texas football?
Everybody's complaining about inflation, but the best information in the market is almost free.
That's right. We subscribe to the Tom Brady theory of deflation, and that's what we're doing at Inside Texas. Come join us, and you'll learn a lot, and you'll have a lot of fun. Hey, we want to talk about something that I think is going to be pretty interesting for folks. We're 100 days out from Texas football opening, roughly. And yeah, Ian took a big breath there, like, oh, well, what am I going to write about? Well, one of the things that I wrote about, and one of the things we're going to discuss, are some of the early indicators for Texas and their rivals. And what we mean by that are what are some of the key marquee games that are going to reveal vital information both about Texas and some of our primary opponents. And we're going to focus on Michigan, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and of course, the Texas Longhorns. So one thing that is interesting about Texas, and I think this has always been useful for the Longhorns when they've used it correctly, is they've got a really big game early in the season against the Michigan Wolverines, the defending national champions. Ian, we know Michigan lost their head coach. We know they were devastated, frankly, on offense at multiple levels, to include quarterback. But on defense, I think people are looking at their losses. They're looking at multiple guys from their defense getting drafted. I think they had 6 or 7. And they're thinking that they're going to take a step down. And I think as you and I look into their defense, we don't think they're going to take much of a step down at all. So let's talk a little bit about this matchup and what might this game tell us about the University of Texas in 2024.
Michigan is really big in the trenches on both sides of the ball. So you're immediately going to get that SEC test. Maybe actually more challenging test than the SEC will even present. For sure, Michigan has as good or better defensive tackle tandem and overall defensive line as any team in the SEC. But their offensive line is also very physical. I noticed in their spring game, they came out in the first play, they just lined up and ran power at their own first team defensive line. And they blew open a hole for like 6 or 7 yards. So they're replacing, I think, every single starter on offense on the line. But they're still going to maintain that physicality and smash mouth mindset. Their offensive line coach is now the head coach. So it's kind of like when David Shaw took over at Stanford for Jim Harbaugh, where they maintained a lot of the same identity in their offensive approach. So for a while. Yeah, I don't know how long. But, I mean, they're just going to come out and smack Texas in the mouth. So we're going to find out, like, is this Texas offensive line as good as we think it is? Has DJ Campbell made a leap? Is Hayden Connor ready to play at that level every week in the inside? And then can Texas hold up a defensive tackle without Sweat and Murphy when a team just comes right at them?
Yeah, one of the quotes from Sharon Moore's first press conference: "We will continue to attack each day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. And I promise you, pause, we will smash." We're about to encounter, smash, which is, given the double connotation, that's amazing. An enthusiasm unknown to mankind is about to be unleashed on the University of Texas in just a few days. So That's going to be fascinating. I've seen puppies playing. That's a tremendous level of enthusiasm, and I think Michigan's going to exceed that. So yeah, I think that's going to be the case. I think they're going to be very physical on the lines, and then I think if we talk about that matchup specifically with Texas, Ian, if we have any concerns, it is, and there won't be many teams constructed that would be able to potentially do this to Texas. But if there is a team that could line up and grind down the University of Texas, that team might be Michigan. We don't know yet, but we do know that Alex Orji, who is likely to be the starter, we're not 100% sure about that.
Yeah.
We know that he weighs about 235 pounds. We know he's one of the best athletes on the Michigan roster.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that they are going to run the ball, not only downhill with their running backs, but also with Orji as a ball carrier, getting that extra man advantage. They're going to double team inside. They're going to try to say, hey, we noticed Sweat and Murphy are gone. We also noticed that you guys are good pass rushers. We're not going to allow you to pass rush our quarterback that we're not quite sure about his decision making. We're going to limit this game. We're going to snap the ball with 2 seconds left on the play clock. And as Sharon Moore so eloquently said, we are going to smash. So if Texas can stop that, does that bode well? Is that an early indicator that this Longhorn defense could really be a unit to be reckoned with?
Yeah, there's going to be multiple points there, right? Like if Michigan lines up and smashes Texas, that's a bad sign because Texas is going into this game knowing what's coming. So if you can't scheme up a way to withstand it, then that's going to be a season-long journey to figure that out. And then if they do stop it, how do they stop it? Like how much do they have to sell out? Because the level of selling out to stop the run you can get away with against Orji and Michigan is going to be beyond what you can get away with against like a Carson Beck or I don't know, some of the other teams you're likely to face in the SEC, Kentucky or whoever else, right? So yeah, can they stop it at all? And then if so, at what cost?
Yeah, I think that's right. And then let's flip the battlefield here for Sark. He is going to be facing, I think, other than perhaps Georgia, probably the most talented defense. Although Texas will see some other good defenses, and they'll be featured in some of the teams we're going to talk about in a moment. Sark is going to be facing a very talented defense. We know that it's a defensive coordinator who has a history of loving to blitz. Given the talent in his front line, though, is he going to have to blitz, or does he just view that as an extra bonus that he gets to do it anyway and really rack up the TFLs and the sacks? How is Sark going to attack that, and how is he going to open up a lead? Because I think if you can open up a lead on Michigan, that really destroys their ability to wear on you over time on the other side of the ball.
I think this is going to be a big week for Texas's RPO game and the play we call Ezekiel's wheel, where there's like multiple options down the field for Ewers to scan. Because that heavy blitzing style that their new defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, loves in the NFL level, at the NFL, you don't face RPOs the same way you do in college. So bringing a bunch of pass rushers and leaving your back end to play complicated, zone match schemes when the offense is running the ball and then they're releasing guys on wheel routes. And if this is a great day for Texas, I think one of the ways that happens is that Martindale is not prepared to handle a spread RPO type attack of the sort that he probably didn't face that much in the NFL. Maybe it'd be worth looking to see how he did against Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins, if they even played or not. But he was on his way out of the NFL. He's in Michigan for a reason. They wanted him, but he was available for a reason. So that's going to be really interesting just to see how that meshes. His predecessors probably would have been fine, but for Martindale, this is a new thing.
Prediction? I think the Texas running backs are going to play a role in this game in the passing game.
Yeah.
I think we're going to want to get the ball out, especially early. I think we want to get it out pretty quickly because, Michigan is not the defense you want to give up shots to your quarterback on. And certainly try to hold the ball for the big play. I think you want to try to create some tempo. And I think it's going to be a battle of will. Sark doesn't play particularly fast for an offensive-minded coach, right? He doesn't try to use exhaustion as a means of beating down the defense. He tries to beat down the defense pretty honestly with his play calls and with his players. Michigan is highly incentivized to play a game that's going to last 2 hours and 10 minutes, right? Yep. They want each offense to run 55 plays. I wonder if Texas will show a little bit of tempo in this game.
They did against Alabama. Each of the last 2 years when they could get away with it. So I agree. It would have been nice if this game were in Austin. I guess it will be in what, 2027 or something. They come back. But it's going to be a very pleasant day in Ann Arbor when this game is played.
Well,
probably 70s or something.
Yeah, that is one nice aspect of Michigan that.
But not great for tempo. Tempo is better when it's like 110.
Yeah, tempo is good when it's pretty grueling. Tempo and urgency is also good when you're buying a house, Ian. And one of the ways you can assure that you execute your offensive game plan in acquiring the home of your dreams, got to get the right mortgage guy in your corner. That guy, Gabe Winslow. You can reach him at 832-557-1095. He serves the entire great state of Texas, though he lives in Houston. And he also is licensed in some other states. So just because you don't live in Texas, you're an exiled Longhorn like myself and like Ian used to be, soon won't be, returning to the motherland, he can help you out. And at the very least, even if he's not licensed in the state, give him a call anyway and run your deal by him. Why? Because he's a cool guy and he'll help you out. He knows you're a fellow Longhorn or a Longhorn enthusiast, and he's a good dude. He'll just help you out. He'll help you with your mortgage because he's a nice guy, even though he won't get paid for it. So that's the kind of quality of guy that you want to do business with. And frankly, he's really good at what he does. He's very sharp. He is on top of it. Over 20 years in the industry, Texas grad, law degree from a top 15 law school, a former National Merit Scholar. This guy is a little sharper than your average bear when it comes to the mortgage industry. And if you talk to him in the first 4 or 5 minutes of your conversation, you'll realize very quickly that is the case. Here's my proposition to you. If he's not your first call, if you're out shopping a mortgage, make darn sure he's your last call. At the very least, run your deal by him and then get his constructive criticism, his feedback, or even see if you can beat your deal. All right, give him a call, 832-557-1095. And as happy as we are with Steve Sarkisian, Ian, we're talking about a coach that's 1-2 against the Oklahoma Sooners. 1-3 ain't going to cut it. We need to even up that series, and we need Sark to start making his push. Let's talk a little bit about OU. They are going to have a couple of early indicator games. One of them that's going to be interesting is at Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
So Auburn, if you followed them at all last year, in very Hugh Freeze-like fashion, they got very much up for a couple of big marquee opponents, specifically Georgia and Alabama. And they put major scares into both. Alabama beat Auburn, frankly, on a miracle. And then they went and got beaten by New Mexico State and floundered with some other opponents that you wouldn't think that they'd struggle with. I wonder if they're going to use OU as one of those circle the game prep games because it is a home game. It's on the plains of Jordan-Hare. OU's coming in with a young quarterback, a offensive line that frankly is not profiling as one of Biedenbaugh's best. Say that fast 5 times if you like alliteration. And I wonder if a Tennessee defense, which loves pressure, inflicting negative plays, sacks, they'll do anything to get you in 2nd and 13, 3rd and 11. Are they licking their chops looking to attack this OU offense? And depending on how OU deals with this, with a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback, a new offensive line, will there be vital information that Texas and Pete Kwiatkowski can learn about how to attack this OU offense before the Red River Shootout?
That should be one way or the other. Auburn also, they have a lot of guys that can cover in the secondary. They're not very big, but they have a lot of guys that can turn and run. They play a nickel corner. The obvious play would be to do like what Cincinnati did a year ago and just man Oklahoma up, and then have a free guy to either not get gashed in the run game or to have a guy to blitz and attack that offensive line. I don't know. This Auburn team is not loaded up with NFL defensive linemen like when Kevin Steele was there before he plotted to take over. So I don't know the full extent to which they'll be able to introduce Oklahoma to the SEC, but playing a Jordan Hare is a big deal. I think you're right. Auburn will put a lot of emphasis on it. I'm really curious to see how they defend Oklahoma, and then obviously if Texas borrows from that or if they just keep running back the same script they've been trying against Oklahoma and that style of offense the last couple of years, which hasn't really worked that well.
Well, one thing we do know about Hugh Freeze is he is not opposed to throwing together a asymmetrical game plan for a specific opponent.
He loves it.
He loves it.
Remember in The Blind Side, the book, not the movie. In the book, it really is an emphasis where he wants to outsmart everybody on the schedule. And then finally he's like, all right, we're just going to run gap behind Michael Orr 100 times.
Well, he learned that from Sandra Bullock. If you remember, she taught him power football. Stop trying to fool everybody, Hugh. I wonder if he loved that portrayal of himself in that movie. Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. And look, the converse is also true. Yeah, maybe Tennessee gets 5 sacks and 8 hits on the quarterback and 11 tackles for loss. You know what? Maybe OU and Jackson Arnold prove that they're very prepared to handle overloads and blitzes and things like that. And they kill Auburn with Jackson Arnold's legs or throwing the deep ball. So, Ian, you seem like you're not sure that that's going to happen, but we'll see. I mean, the point is we get information either way, right? And I think while you do want to sort of dance with who brung you, I do think Pete Kwiatkowski and Johnny Nansen and Steve Sarkisian need to be open to the idea of if OU has a new quarterback, a new offensive coordinator, and a relatively new offensive line, let's be open to not just rolling out our defense. Let's be open to maybe throwing in a couple of wrinkles in a big rivalry game with a lot of pressure where you've seen quarterbacks and coaches panic in games past.
I can name 5 instances off the top of my head of Texas or Oklahoma bringing a novel approach to that game and winning as a result.
Yes.
So
I think we saw it last year.
Yeah. Oklahoma had a couple, to the viewer, maybe subtle but important wrinkles for Texas in that game.
We also learned back in the 2000s that Texas didn't know what zone read was. That was fun.
Oh, yeah.
Quentin Griffin still running. So
that's right.
Is there anything that we can learn from the OU defense? Look, I actually think whatever you think of Venables, the head coach, whether he succeeds ultimately or doesn't, we know that he's been recruiting pretty well. And we know that he has a vision for defense and he understands defensive football. That is fairly unimpeachable with respect to Mr. Venables. I don't know if he fully has all the hosses that he wants, but boy, in year 3, he is assembling some of the pieces. And I think there's some individual players in that defense that are really good at the college level. Billy Bowman leaps to mind. Danny Stutzman leaps to mind. I love the edge that they got from, I think, Miami of Ohio.
Caden Williams.
Opposite him is also solid. They've got some players. They got some pieces. Venables can do some stuff. Is there anything in particular, like Auburn facing that defense, that you think is interesting? Hugh Freeze is pretty good at introducing wrinkles in the running game. In fact, they ran the ball pretty well in Georgia last year. Is there anything we can learn from that, or is that a little less decisive than how OU's offense plays against Auburn's D?
It's definitely less decisive, I think. We may learn more about Auburn from that exchange than we learned about Oklahoma. So Auburn is really in want of like one dangerous skill player for Freeze to scheme open. I don't know if they have that guy or not. They added a bunch of new players in the portal and in recruiting. If they have that guy, then how well Oklahoma can keep him covered while blitzing. Because Venables loves to blitz, and this particular Oklahoma team really looks like a boom or bust kind of blitzing team to my eyes. Because they don't, even with Demonic Williams, they still don't have the like Gerald McCoy, Tommy Harris dominant front line. But they have a lot of guys that would be really nasty in blitz packages, and they're getting better and better in coverage behind them. So you figure they're going to be very aggressive on the blitz this year, and how that goes against Auburn is probably going to be pretty instructive.
I think that's right. I think they've got corners that they've upgraded some, and then I think they're very comfortable with Billy Bowman in single high, reacting to the ball with some pressure up front. And Venables' blitzes, if you look at him even from his early time at OU, and then of course at Clemson, where I think it got even better, he has a good feel for the blitz and constructing it, the timing of it. What is that amusing to you, Ian? What do you think?
Yeah, his timing on when to blitz is really remarkable. I'm curious to see how well that holds up this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Well, the part that's being unsaid right now is signal stealing. How much does sideline communication via the helmet, how much is that going to short circuit Venables? The fact is you're not going to have 100% sideline communication on either side of the ball. You're still going to have to use signals. And Venables is still pretty gifted at breaking signals down. So we'll see, but I do think there's an opportunity to short circuit. Also, don't be surprised at some gamesmanship, which is if one team's signals or their helmet fails, quote unquote, their communications fail, they're glitching, the other team won't be allowed to use them.
I like how you keep putting that out there. Like I know you want Sark to hear that. Like please,
I want Sark to hear that.
Please don't think that they tried a lot of stuff last year. They huddled a lot, and they still had some issues from things that I've heard that may or may not be true. But from what I've heard, they still had issues with the Sooner strategies. So you could tell when Sark was asked about it, they're like, "Would you be in favor of headsets?" He was like, "Please, God, please change this rule." He hates like spending time on that when it could be spent on the million other things he has to do as a coach.
Yep, absolutely right. And then, so look, OU also faces Tennessee. They get Tennessee at home before Auburn. I don't know that they'll necessarily will learn a lot of new information vis-a-vis what we could learn from Auburn. I will see Tennessee has a pressure defense. They try to inflict tackles for loss. They try to get sacks. They don't just sit back. And their defense has steadily improved every year under Heupel. So that's an interesting thing to look out for. The Heupel offense is going to challenge the OU defense in some interesting and novel ways. They'll almost feel like they're facing Jeff Lebby in some of the concepts, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know how much of that is emulative by Texas exactly, but I think we'll get the gist of it, right? If Tennessee's able to open up, hey, this corner, this specific guy opposite Woody Washington can't cover, Sark will notice that and I think enact that. So I don't want to dwell on the Tennessee matchup. Is there anything very quickly you want to hit on that?
Just those isolated matchups. They have James Pierce right at the edge, and Oklahoma as of now their left tackle is slated to be Michael Tarquin, who transferred out of Florida, struggling for playing time, and then got demoted to the bench last year at USC at right tackle. He's now Oklahoma's left tackle, which does not bode well. He's like probably about Derek Kerstetter quality.
If we see some stuff there, let's just say I am confident or hopeful that this might be a Trey Moore game. This might be his real unveiling of a dude who's just sprinting around the corner like his hair is on fire, and just winning. And that's really hard for an offense to cope with. If they have to bring in extra tight ends and do other stuff to deal with that, it really blunts a lot of what they're trying to do on offense. All right.
Also, they don't have tight ends too, so double whammy there.
Very true. So let's end with Texas A&M, a renewed rival, and they actually face a matchup. You kind of squint your eyes, and there's some similarities. There's some similarities between Notre Dame, who Texas A&M faces August 31st at Kyle Field in College Station. And this Notre Dame team, Ian, has some passing resemblance to Michigan. And here's why. They project to be a top 10 defense. I think they could be top 5 if a couple of things come together for them. And they're particularly good inside. So if Michigan has the best defensive tackle combo in the country, and I believe they do, Notre Dame is probably number 2. Notre Dame also has a couple of premier guys in their secondary who returned, just like Will Johnson is returning for Michigan. Bottom line, Notre Dame's going to have a really good defense. And that will be an interesting challenge for A&M debuting a new system, a new scheme. Connor Wegman obviously will kind of have his coming out of, is this guy ready to level up? And then on the other side of the ball, Notre Dame has an interesting playmaker at quarterback who's not fully proven as a passer. And this is a guy that Mike Elko might have some familiarity with. So talk to me about that Notre Dame A&M matchup and what information might be gleaned from that.
That's Riley Leonard for the people listening that don't know Notre Dame's roster well. Transferred from Duke to Notre Dame. Second year in a row that Notre Dame has just gone out and purchased the best ACC quarterback returning to come plug in their offense. So NIL is treating them well too. I hate this matchup for the Aggie offense. Notre Dame has man corners now. That's like a Marcus Freeman specialty. He's really gotten them up to snuff there where they were not like that with Brian Kelly. That was like a weakness. The defensive line that you said, A&M's offensive line this year is like total overhaul, rebuild mode. And all their main guys that they're probably going to play there are young. So not guys that are going to be necessarily well suited to facing a ton of blitzes against a defensive line of this caliber. And it's like Notre Dame's defensive tackles, they're not just good, they're like very athletic. Like their nose is like 280 or something. He's like,
they're undersized and super quick.
Yeah. It's a nightmare matchup on that side. So, I mean, it has to be Wegman has to make plays, and then that Elko defense has to keep them in it. So, like, that battle between him and Riley Leonard who I think missed all of spring for Notre Dame. So there's a little bit of question there as to how quickly he's going to get initiated into their offense. But that matchup is tough too, right? Notre Dame's got a lot of new offensive linemen. They just had both tackles drafted. And A&M's defensive line is like one of the 5 best in the country, potentially. So, yikes. What's the over-under on that game?
The numbers was started at 50.5. At some places, it's drifted down to 48.5. I might have taken advantage of that 50.5 number and bet the under. I think a 24-17 game is well within probability. Believe it or not, well, I mean, there are reasons for this. Obviously, A&M does have a distinct home field advantage, but Notre Dame is the dog. So you're not going to get a lot of points, but you can still get Notre Dame +1 or Notre Dame +1.5. So interesting.
Here's another thing. Something that will be at play in this game that's not at play in Texas, Michigan, is that it'll be 100 degrees, muggy. And Notre Dame does not play in those conditions very often.
Nope.
I don't know if A&M, like if they're facing like a Sumlin team, it might be a bigger deal because they would just like tempo the crap out of the Irish and make them run around. I don't know if Elko is going to take advantage of that or not. And his offensive coordinator is Colin Klein, who does use tempo, but I just don't know if they're going to – they should. especially with a young line. They should just get really simple, spread them out, but I don't know.
Yeah, the problem is when you're playing a really good defense, it brings to mind the old military adage of never run to your death, right?
I haven't heard that one. That's cool.
Yeah, it's useful for football as well, right? People are
Yeah.
like, go tempo, and it's like, well, if you're playing an elite defense, you may have guaranteed yourself 2 first quarter interceptions and 3 sacks, right? So I think it'll be interesting. The other thing I will say, Ian, that's an interesting part of this, just kind of a random potpourri. Notre Dame has not won these kinds of early marquee matchups over the last couple of decades. They they have typically failed in this early season spotlight kind of game. So make of that whatever you will. And then secondly, Riley Leonard's legs are a great equalizer and a great help to potentially a green offensive line. And the reason Notre Dame should not lack confidence in running Riley Leonard is that the thing we learned from the Notre Dame spring game is their second and third team quarterbacks are outstanding. And they look to be probably better passers than Riley Leonard. It's just Leonard has starting experience and crazy athleticism. So I think Notre Dame won't be shy about running him, about including him in the quarterback run game, which will be an effective way to attack some of the things that Elko likes to do. That said, Elko knows Riley Leonard really well, and I think he's going to have an opportunity to demonstrate to his former pupil that he's watched him practice and play a lot of football games, and he knows he doesn't like to run left and try to throw. He knows that that he's going to drop his eyes if you get immediate pressure up the middle. All the stuff that a coach sort of knows about their former quarterback. So, any thoughts on that specifically for Texas that we might learn about A&M from this game?
It's so early, and they're going to be so new in their schemes. I don't know if it'll be super instructive. Like probably some of the later games in the SEC will tell us more. But I do think the best case scenario for A&M this year is probably involves Wegman being really good, and we're going to have a decent idea of what Wegman will be like this year in that game.
Agreed. I think the A&M upside rests on their defense and Connor Wegman kind of becoming this efficiency machine of, a lot of 22 of 29 for 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interception box scores. And he converts, 5 third and 8s with just good precision passing, keeps drives alive. That is the formula for Texas A&M to surprise and be a 9-3, 10-2 type of football team in Elko's debut year.
He's got to run some too, I think. I know they're going to want to be a little bit careful, but like Colt McCoy level, like maybe 70, 80 carries, maybe like 5 to 7 rushing touchdowns, use him around in the end zone. He can run. I know he gets hurt every single year.
Yeah.
But he can run, and you got runners behind him, so like much must be risked in war.
I think we also post this. We need to look up Colt McCoy's carries. I think they're going to surprise you how much he carries the ball.
Yeah, I think he had like 100 in 08. So not quite that much volume, but I think you take my point.
All right. Well, it's a Paul and Ian podcast if we're getting into ephemera like Colt McCoy's carries as compared to Connor Wegman. But that's why we like the deep dive. We like to go deep. We like to educate. We like to inform. And if you like those things, come join us at Inside Texas. We already talked about the promo. Use promo code IT1 to get 2 months of InsideTexas.com for $1. 25 cents every 2 weeks. What a bargain. It's like your grandpa's old stories about he used to get a nickel and he'd take the bus into town and see a movie and buy a popcorn and have a penny left over. That's kind of what it's like to join Inside Texas and kick the tires on us. So without any further ado, I am Paul Wadlington. That's Ian Boyd. This was the Deep Dive. We'll see y'all next week.